Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the 8th episode of the story where there are so many things that we as humans are unaware of, or lack in understanding. The bijou are one of those things. Follow the journey of Naruto Uzumaki as he befriends the yokai that was sealed inside of him and, she, helps him grow stronger. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. The two thugs that had gotten their asses handed to them by the blonde shinobi and his red-haired mate woke up only an hour after Naruto and Akane had left them. Ugh. The one with the rose tattoo groaned as he held his head. What hit me? It felt like he had been hit with one of those trains that he had heard about one time up north. Blinking a few times, he tried to clear out both the headache and the blurriness to his eyes. He was seeing triple. I think we drank a little too much waraji, said the man with the beanie. He blinked several times to clear the cobwebs and headache away before standing up. Get up, we need to get back to base. He began to walk through the forest. Oi, Waraji stood and began walking as well. Wait up. As Waraji tried to catch up with his partner, he didn't even notice a small red fox following him. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. It was early in the morning and a figure was walking through the forest with a basket in hand. This person, whose face was a thing of beauty, with long raven hair, a friendly smile and compassionate, dark brown eyes, was walked through the forest with a lightness in their step that no civilian could possibly produce. Humming a soft tune, the young figure moved deftly around a tree that had been blocking the path forward. They took a few steps into the clearing, and then stopped dead in their tracks, eyes widening to the point where it looked like the small orbs would roll out of their sockets. A large blush soon followed, spreading across this person's face. The scene before the young figure was one that the raven-haired figure had never come across, nor expected to come across. Despite this, they knew from simple observation, as well as the fact that their most precious person kept a small orange book under his bed, which had a scene eerily similar to this one, exactly what had occurred in this clearing. Clothes were strewn all throughout the clearing, a shirt was hanging from a tree branch several feet away, a pair of pants lay crumbled against the ground next to them, orange boxers were tossed aside. Eyes roved around before landing on a sleeping bag in the middle of the clearing with two figures snuggled together inside. While debating what to do, the raven-haired figure shifted their feet, then blinked and a rustling noise reached their ears. Curiously, the young figure lifted a foot, eyes traveling down, where a blush erupted on their face when they saw a red lace thong underneath them. It took a moment to decide what to do. The raven-haired person didn't want to be in an area where two people who had obviously just done the horizontal mambo were sleeping. Yet at the same time this was the only place with the herbs the brown-eyed figure needed. In the end they moved further in, being careful not to step on any of the haphazardly discarded clothes. I hope you have a good reason for interrupting my sleep. The raven-haired person's eyes widened at hearing the male voice. Eyes turned towards the sleeping bag where a young blonde was staring at the brown-eyed figure with unblinking eyes. He raised an eyebrow. Well, this is the only spot where I can find the herbs that I need to heal my friend, the brown-eyed figure said, stuttering only slightly. Aside from the fact that there were two naked people in the clearing, both extremely attractive no matter what your gender was, the stare that the blonde was giving was penetrating. I see, Naruto said, closing his eyes for a moment before sighing. It was troublesome, but he couldn't just deny someone who needed to get herbs for their friend. Could you hide behind a tree for a moment while I wake a Kanakan and we get dressed? Sure, the raven-haired figure let out a soft squeak before shooting over to a tree and moving behind it, where they crouched down and covered their eyes. Grumbling a bit, Naruto turned his head to stare at Akane's still sleeping face. She looked peaceful, her eyes closed, mouth slightly parted in an expression that was almost too tempting to resist. The slow rise and fall of her luscious chest let him know she was still having a meeting with the Sandman. Smiling, he leaned in and woke her up the same way he woke her up every time he awoke before her. By kissing her and playing her breasts until the pleasure woke her up. It worked like a charm. Akane moaned softly into his mouth, before she began to kiss him back. She rolled them over so that she was on top of him. Opening her mouth, she felt his tongue snake into her mouth, caressing the underside of her tongue as it came out in an attempt to get inside of him. Tongues dueled, dancing a duet that was as old as man. They only broke apart for a moment, when air became a necessity, and even then the pair continued their engagement with intermittent pecks. Morning Narakan, the red-haired beauty mumbled against his lips. Morning Beneheim, Naruto said, kissing her one more time before backing off, causing Akane to pout. Sorry for waking you up so early and not giving you your morning satisfaction. It was something of a joke between the two. So far every morning since Akane had been out of the seal they would wake up and start where they left off the night before until both were thoroughly satisfied and ready to start the day. Akane had jokingly referred to it as their morning ritual. Why can't you? Asked Akane in that "you'd better have a damn good reason or I'll kick your ass" kind of voice. Someone's waiting behind that tree over there to pick the herbs within this clearing, Naruto said. Oh, Akane looked over at the tree, her nose finally picking up the scent of another person now that she wasn't engaged in her previous activity. She sighed and said, I suppose our morning sex can wait until after they leave. Both Naruto and Akane snickered when they heard a squeak from the tree the blonde had pointed to. It was always so fun screwing with others. Soon enough the two were dressed in a set of new clothes Naruto always kept on hand in a scroll. The sleeping bag was resealed and they had picked up their old clothes. All right. We're all dressed, you can come out now, Naruto called. The person from before did just that, walking out from behind the tree, face lit up like a red star, eyes meekly pointed at the ground. All this person needed to be Hinata would be the patented finger poke. After several minutes of scrutinizing the person before them, Naruto had to ask, You're a boy, right? The raven-haired figure looked up with a gleam in their eye, embarrassment forgotten. You can tell. You're the first one who was ever able to figure that out. The two demonic ninja got the feeling that most people had a hard time guessing that the brown-haired boy was in fact a boy. Judging from the tone in his voice, this probably annoyed him to no end, though they both wondered why he was wearing pink if that were the case, since it didn't really help with his image of masculinity. Well, since you met us, naked in a clearing at that, Naruto grinned and Akane giggled at seeing the boy's blush return full force. I believe introductions are in order. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and this lovely vixen right here is Akane Uzumaki, my mate. Mate? Asked the brown-eyed boy at the curious turn of phrase, shaking the hand that Naruto offered. We never went through any marriage ceremony, Naruto shrugged indifferently. Human matrimony didn't really matter to them. In fact, it meant less than dirt. We don't really feel the need to and plan on spending the rest of our lives together. So I believe mate is the appropriate term. Akane smiled at the way Naruto said that. It was spoken without inflection, bravado, or any kind of bragging tone, meaning he truly wished to spend his life with hers. And they were both gonna live long, long lives. Makes sense I guess, the boy mumbled, before shaking his head and introducing himself, I'm Haku. Nice to meet you, Naruto said, you mentioned something about herbs. Yes, Haku said, as if just remembering why he was here. I have a friend who injured himself while working, I was hoping to get some medical herbs to help him heal. Mind if we help? Asked Akane, smiling slightly. Haku felt his face heat up at the sight of her beautiful smile. Akane had that effect on men. Thank you, he stuttered. I'd be careful about staring at me too much though, Akane warned as she noticed his eyes were starting to drift across her body. It didn't bother her much, but... The last person who even glanced at my breasts received an enema from Naruto's blade. My apologies, Haku stuttered, his face going from bright red to deathly pale. Gruesome images of the blonde shoving a giant head-cleaving blade up his ass passed through his mind and he, if possible, paled even more. No worries, Naruto waved his apologies off. That guy was a prick, and I could tell he was. Stripping Akane with his eyes, not just noticing her beauty like you were. Besides, if I hurt or killed every man that drooled over her, well. He chuckled a bit, as if remembering an inside joke. There wouldn't be many men left in the world, would there? Just the gay ones, Haku agreed, right before his eyes widened and he slapped a hand to his mouth in mortification. Ha 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 ha. I like you already, Naruto laughed heartily, a large grin on his face. After the initial pleasantries and teasing was over, the three knelt down and began to pick out herbs from the ground. During this time Haku kept looking back and forth between the pair with a curious expression on his face. I was just wondering, he said at last, unable to contain his curiosity, what are you two doing here? Upon noticing their questioning looks he continued, what I mean is, I've never seen either of you in town, so I know you two aren't from Nami no Kuni. So I was just wondering what you two were doing here. We could say the same for you, Akane shot back. After all, those clothes are much cleaner than the rags the people who live in the city wear. Also, you don't quite have the same hopeless look as the others we've met. I'm visiting my friend, Haku answered. I had heard he was having a hard time here thanks to Gato and came to support him. Naruto and Akane looked at each other for a second before shrugging. We're actually just travelers, we had heard that Nami was rather prosperous and came here only to find it like this. Naruto sighed, now Gato's pretty much made it impossible to get transport out of Nami, so we can't leave anymore. And I guess the reason you two were in the forest was because you didn't want to get caught by Gato's thugs, Haku reasoned. It was a logical thought. If Gato goons saw two people with clothing like theirs, they would naturally assume the people were rich, then attempt to rough them up. One also had to consider the fact that Akane could make straight women turn gay and gay men turn straight. There was no telling what Gato's men would do if they saw her. Oh no, Akane said with a mischievous grin that Naruto recognized. Unfortunately, Haku didn't. We just came into this forest to have sex. You see, Narukin and I read this one book called Ika Ika, and there's a scene where the hero has sex with a forest nymph. We were just reenacting that scene. Haku's reaction was priceless. His eyes widened to cosmic proportions, surpassing those of any the demonic pair had ever seen. The color of his face went straight from his porcelain pale skin to a megaton blush so red there were simply no words to truly describe it. Then he was blown back as a large geyser of blood blew out of his nose, forcing the pair to dodge out of the way so as not to get blood on their clothes. They didn't like blood that didn't come from dead enemies getting on their clothing. Meanwhile, Haki was sent sailing back, smacking head first into a tree hard enough to dent it. It was a damn good thing for him that he had unconscious from blood loss long before he hit the tree. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Later that day Naruto's clone dispelled and the blonde went to inform Anko of his Kage Bunshin's findings. He found the purple-haired Jonin in the kitchen, munching on some dango and drinking some red bean soup. Naruto ignored the usual sight as he informed her of all of his clone's discoveries, bringing a grin to the woman's face. This is perfect, she said, her mind already going over possible plans and strategies they could use to kill Gato and get out of this hellhole. Not to say the place was bad, but that damn Uchiha brat and the pink-haired harpy were really beginning to get on her nerves. With this information we'll easily be able to infiltrate Gato's base of operations. What time will we head out? Asked Naruto as Anko stood up and stretched, a groan of satisfaction escaping her lips as her bones popped deliciously. We'll begin our operation at midnight, she decided after a moment's thought. If what you told me is true, most of those fools guarding the fort will either be passed out or preoccupied, the last word she spoke with distaste, and more than a hint of rage. Let Akane know when our operation is. Naruto didn't feel the need to tell Anko that his mate knew what she said almost as soon as she said it. There was a 0.1 second time delay when relaying a conversation to each other via the seal. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. What do you mean they're going to assassinate Gato while we stay here? It was dinner time now, and Naruto, Akane and Anko had spent the day preparing for their infiltration and assassination mission. Basically, this meant that Naruto and Akane spent their time together, exploring the forests of Nami no Kuni, skinny dipping in a small lake with a waterfall that they had found, and having sex in said lake. You know, doing the important things in life. Of course, Anko had to inform Kakashi that their mission was a go, since Team 7's job was closely intertwined with Team 12's. Unfortunately, she made the mistake of saying they were going to kill off Gato in front of Sasuke. Said boy was currently glaring at his sensei, Anko, Naruto, Akane and everyone else in the general vicinity as he pouted like a petulant child who had his favorite toy taken away. I'm an Uchiha, an elite, there's no way some clanless loser and his whore could possibly do as good as, URK. Sasuke's words were cut off as Naruto's forearm slammed into his throat, smacking against the wall hard enough to rattle his bones and then pinning him there. When his eyes were finally able to focus on something other than the stars spinning around them, they promptly wished the stars back. Glaring at him with rage-induced eyes that looked like they could literally kill was none other than Naruto. Now you listen here, you worthless sack of shit. The blonde Hanyu hissed as he unleashed his killing intent on the hapless boy, who felt like he was going to soil himself from the sheer amount Naruto unleashed upon him. A part of him was surprised he hadn't, of course. This didn't sit well with one pink-haired banshee. How dare you touch my Sasuke, can it, Pinky? Akane said as she, once again, flicked her finger with deadly accuracy. Sakura was sent souring through the dining room and smashed through a wall from the overpowered finger flick to the head. Whoops! Akane looked slightly sheepish as she looked at the now ruined wall. She had put a little more power behind that than needed. I'll pay for that wall, everyone just sweat dropped at her. With the pleasant distraction now gone, Naruto returned his attention to the kid who was beginning to turn purple due to a lack of oxygen. As I was saying, if you ever, and I mean ever, call a Kanakan anything other than her name, I will make sure that the Uchiha clan will end with you. Naruto gave Akane a mental prod who grinned and cast a simple, but very effective illusion over Sasuke. Sasuke's eyes widened as he was forced to watch firsthand what Naruto would do. Needless to say, getting castrated with a rusty kunai, some ninja wire and rubber duck was not something that looked all that pleasant. He would be having nightmares about that duck for years to come. Naruto, I think you've berated my student enough, Kakashi said with an eye smile, hoping to diffuse the tension. Normally, he may have stopped the whiskered blonde before he did something like this, but aside from the fact that all the Jonin had been told by Sarutobi to never get on Naruto or Akane's bad side, he also didn't really like Sasuke. If he had not been more or less forced to pass this team, he wouldn't even be here. Fine, Naruto released Sasuke, who slid down the wall until he landed on his butt. Finally, released from his imprisonment and realizing that he had just barely escaped a small brush with dead, the Uchiha heir released an intense shudder and, much his embarrassment and the disgust of everyone there, his bladder as well. Remember what I said, Uchiha, he said before turning away, let's get this mission started, I don't really feel like remaining with this trash any longer than I have to. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. 3 figures moved silently through the dark night, jumping through the trees as they made their way to Gato's compound. Their movements were so graceful and precise, one would likely mistake them for some kind of jungle predator. Soon, all 3 stopped as they reached the outer edge of the base where Gato had stationed himself. The compound was situated on the eastern side of the island, which was the side that faced the open ocean, in a small bay-type inlet that provided shelter during the more treacherous weather. There were several cargo ships anchored in the bay harbor, and one large and rather luxurious-looking private yacht. The yacht was likely Gato's personal vessel. The compound was a mix between a military-style fortress, like the ones he had seen in Kiri, with a high barbed wire fence running around the entire compound and 4 high watchtowers, one at each corner, and a high-class mansion. There were 8 large half-cylinder buildings on the left side that Naruto assumed were barracks. At least his clone showed that most of the thugs came in and out of those buildings more periodically throughout the night than any of the other ones. On the right was a large square, metal building that had a large sliding door. It was near the harbor, and his fox clone had seen the door opening several times during its survey of the base to reveal large boxes, barrels, and cages full of women. The last building was in the middle. It was a fairly large mansion, built from polished white stone, a large double door in the front, columns, and a tiled roof. Behind it was a patio and a large swimming pool. Considering that Gato had only been here a year, Naruto found it highly unlikely that he had this mansion built, feeling it was more probable that Gato had simply killed the daimyo and taken the mansion as his own. From what Tazuna said, this place used to be the daimyo's residence before Gato killed him and his family, Anko said as they stared at the base. She shifted a little, her head moving left and right as she scanned the clearing. That would explain why one part looks like a mansion and the other looks like a makeshift base, Naruto said with narrowed eyes. Still, his security leaves a lot to be desired. Said security consisted of several drunken men who didn't look like they were paying any attention to their duty. Most were sitting on their ass, a large bottle of alcohol in their hands. A few walked around the clearing, but from their slight stumbling it was obvious even they were at least somewhat sloshed. This was why hiring your average thug for anything other than causing havoc was a terrible idea. Was your Kage Bunshin able to find out what was in those ships? Asked Anko, pointing towards the large cargo ships. Yes, a look of disgust crossed Naruto's face, they were carrying several items. Meat and sake, no doubt for the men here. It also brought several large barrels of some kind that held a white, powdery substance, I suspect it was some kind of drug. And the ships also carried several women. So he's either trafficking his drug and slave trade from here, or those items are for him and his men, Akane concluded with a frown. She wondered how someone could operate like this right under everyone's nose. While Gato had only been entrenched in Nami no Kuni for a year, his business had been around for at least a decade, if not longer. That he had been able to get away with such a large-scale black market operation without anyone finding out either spoke very highly of his skills, not likely, luck, or the general stupidity of the daimyos. Of the various countries he had trafficked his drugs and slave trade through, Akane was unsure which one it was, but decided to go with a combination of the latter two. They're likely for him and his men, Anko concluded. There's no point in trafficking his less than legal business in Nami, not until he gets complete control of the country at least. Nami no Kuni used to be a major stopping point on the trade routes between Mizu no Kuni and the rest of the elemental nations, so unless Gato had complete control over it, there was no way he could hide his illegal business in the country. She shook her head and focused on the mission at hand. Okay, kid, go over this with me again. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the kid remark but didn't comment. Those half-cylinder buildings are the barracks, he said, pointing over to the buildings in question. He looked at Anko, his lips drawn into a thin line. You'll need to be careful, there are always several women in there at any given time. So when you killed the bastards in there, just be careful to kill the ones who are awake and pleasing themselves first. Also, you'll want to make sure you don't kill any of the women by accident. Anko scoffed, who do you take me for, kid? A chick with purple hair and a hot body, quipped Akane, getting a glare from said purple-haired woman in return. She just gave the woman a saucy smile and winked. Beneheim, stop antagonizing her, Naruto chided lightly, while he would not deny that he loved watching the way his mate made Anko, as well as everyone else, squirm. Right now he knew that they needed to focus on the mission. With that knowledge he continued. Now the large warehouse-like building is where they keep their drugs and sex slaves. They keep 12 guards in there at all times. However, they're usually too busy playing with the women to be much of a threat. Still, I'll be careful, Narakan, Akane said with a grin. Naruto just nodded, then I suppose it's time we start. I'll report to you, Anko, when I have all of Gato's assets, files and account numbers seized. With nothing more that needed to be said, the three ninja began their operation. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Akane grinned as she finished climbing up the watchtower. Thanks to her illusions she was the only one who had a chance of sneaking somewhere and remaining completely invisible. She looked at the two thugs who were supposed to be watching for intruders, but were drinking instead. She sweat dropped. Scratch her previous statement, Naruto could have just walked up the tower and no one would be the wiser. Both of them looked highly intoxicated, and the smell of alcohol was almost overpowering now that she was in the tower. She would have shaken her head in disgust at how undisciplined these goons were, but this just made her job easier. She didn't even bother to look as shot a small, highly compressed kitsunebi the size of a fingernail at each of them, burning a hole straight through their heads. They fell to the floor with a thud, the smell of cauterized flesh mixing with the stench of alcohol. Shaking her head, she sent a quick message via her mental link through the seal to Naruto as she climbed back down, letting him know she had just finished killing the last group in the towers. As Akane dropped to the ground, she headed for the warehouse where the next stage of her mission was waiting. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Akane just finished with the guards, Naruto said, turning to Anko. He had told her that he and Akane had a seal on them that allowed them to communicate, so she knew that they could talk telepathically. Of course, he never mentioned which seal it was, just that there was a seal. Then it's time we began our part, Anko said and stood up. The two of them took off in a burst of speed, with the people in the guard towers all dead. There would be no one to tell they were there. Channeling chakra to their feet, Naruto and Anko jumped into the air, over the fence, flipping as they did, before landing on their feet. They channeled chakra to cushion their fall, making the landing completely silent. Most of the thugs would be too drunk to hear them anyways, but they didn't feel like taking chances. While Anko split off and headed for the barracks, Naruto headed towards the mansion. He saw a pair of guards, most likely the only ones that were not drunk, standing in front of the mansion. The blonde swerved and changed course. He could kill the two easily enough, but if he did so right now it might alert others. He would leave them be for the moment. Naruto moved along to the left side of the mansion before heading towards it again. As he was about to hit the wall, he jumped, his feet stuck to the bottom using Yuki, and he began to scale the wall in a steady, but still silent run. If Gato was anything like all the other thugs he had killed, the man would probably be on the top floor. The mansion had 4 stories, and when Naruto got to the 4th he crept along the wall until he found a window with a room that was empty. Crouching down and sticking out a finger that was glowing a light green with wind chakra surrounding it, he proceeded to cut his way through the thickened glass. He placed his hands on the glass and used Yuki to stick it to his hands, pulled the glass off, and walked through the hole he had made. When he was in the building he turned around and set the glass the way it had been, using one hand to keep it there while he used his other hand to fuse the glass back in place. He did this by using fire chakra instead of wind to melt the glass, leaving a small seam along the window. I may not be as good a Kanakan is with fire chakra, but I can still do this, Naruto grinned. He turned back around just as several clones silently phased into existence. They already had orders to search the halls and rooms, killing any thugs they ran into and saving any women via their mental connection to Naruto when he made them. One of them quickly opened the door and they were all off. The blonde moved as well, his feet not making a sound as he stealthily roved down the halls. He withheld a snort when he noticed the gaudy and pompous decorations, expensive paintings, busts and various vases lined the walls. Thick red carpet went down the middle of the floor, and the walls were made of gleaming marble. The place screamed opulence, wealth, and arrogance. Naruto did his best to ignore the tacky decor as he continued moving. When Naruto exited one hall he was forced to move back as he spotted 2 more guards standing in front of a large and gaudily decorated door. That was likely Gato's room. The guards inside were much cleaner than the ones he had seen outside. They were also sober and held themselves with a much more professional air. They were probably Ronin, wandering samurai who had turned into swords for fire. It took a moment to think of the best plan to kill them without sounding off an alarm. Looking around, Naruto found that the hallways was ideal for his plan. There were a lot of shadows being cast by the red glow of the oil lamps placed strategically throughout the area. Naruto moved back against the wall, sinking into it. After the bloodline civil war in Kiri, Naruto had upped his training with his bloodline. His ability with darkness manipulation and light manipulation had reached new heights and he could now use his techniques at the barest minimum settings. What this meant was he didn't need more than a single shadow to use a Yamaton technique, and he didn't need any light to use a Hiton technique. In fact, some of his light-based techniques were now more powerful in the dark. This also meant when he had more light or shadows his technique were much stronger, their power increased by a factor of 2 when he had more of each setting. Uzumaki Hijitsu, Yamaton, Kenin Yomi, both men felt their eyes widened as they suddenly found themselves wrapped in shadows. They were quickly pulled straight down through their own shadows on the floor, leaving no trace that they had ever been there. A moment later Naruto emerged from the shadows across the wall. The door was the most ornate piece of crap he had ever seen, even more so now that he could see it up close. Made of a high-quality wood, with intricate golden patterns on it, and cine-like inlays along the outer edge of the door with an ornate golden handle. The door was beautiful in its own right. But it was done in the worst taste, it didn't blend into the rest of the house at all and looked like it had been planted here by Gato for no other reason than to show his wealth and power. Though since his thugs and the abused women were the only ones who would likely see it, Naruto had no clue who the man could actually impress with it. Shaking his head, Naruto knelt down and looked at the keyhole in the handle. It was very similar, albeit a more complicated locking mechanism than the ones he had come across. He didn't think he could actually pick this one. Sighing, he looked down and saw that there was no light coming from inside at all. That could work, he thought as he stuck his hands under the cracks of the door. Using his shadow walking technique, Naruto melded with the shadows inside of the room and moved inside. He re-emerged on the other side in a crouched position and took a look around. It was dark, but his demonically enhanced eyesight allowed him to see everything within the room. A large desk on his left with a window behind it overlooking the sea, a bed on his right and slightly in front of him, walk-in closet on the far side, along with another door that Naruto assumed led to the bathroom. The place was just as ostentatious as the door. Naruto made sure to remain hidden as he looked at the bed. Sleeping on it was a short, fat man with graying hair wearing a nightcap. This was most likely Gato. However, there was also another person in the bed, a woman who was as far away from Gato as physically possible without leaving the bed. She was silently shaking and Naruto could see tear stains on her cheeks. He had planned on killing Gato once he got what he wanted anyways, but seeing this woman just sealed his fate. Naruto appeared right near the bed, grabbed Gato by the hair and yanked. The man was dragged into the air, giving a loud yell of pain as he did so. Naruto spun around on the balls of his feet, right before he let go. Gato was sent flying to the other side of the room, hitting the wall. Before he could even fall down, Naruto threw 10 kunai at him, each one pinning him to the wall via his suit, leaving him stuck there. Who the hell are you? Gato shouted. There wasn't even any bravado in his voice, just fear. It was clear that the man was already well aware of his situation. Having several kunai did that to a man. That was good. Who I am doesn't matter, Naruto said coldly. By this time the woman, a pretty woman in her late teens with light blonde hair and green eyes, had stopped pretending she was asleep and was staring at the scene before her in shock, surprise, and a little bit of fear. Naruto walked over to her and knelt down so he was eye level. Are you alright? The woman's eyes were wide as she nodded. She seemed to be in a state of shock. Naruto sighed and a clone phased into existence beside him. Go with him, he'll protect you from any of Gato's bandits that are still alive. The woman didn't even think to question Naruto as she stood up and ran out with the clone. What do you think you're doing, you piece of shit? Screamed Gato, who was busy wiggling and trying to get out of his pinned against the wall position. It seemed he was trying to regain his bluster. An unsuccessful attempt in Naruto's opinion. When my guards find you, your guards are all dead, Gato, Naruto said in a voice that was so cold the businessman actually wet himself. The blonde's nose crinkled in distaste as he moved over to the man, pulling out all of the kunai from his business suit and letting him drop to the floor on his head. Before Gato could even get up to run away, Naruto grabbed him by the hair and slammed his face down on the desk. "I'm going to kill you, Gato," Naruto said in his cold, uncaring voice, sending chills down the man's spine. "But before I do, you are going to sign over the deeds to this estate, your business and everything else that you own. I'm not giving you shit." Gato screamed, though it wasn't so much a scream of defiance as it was of a man who was in fear of his life. "Very well," Naruto grabbed one of the man's grubby, pig-like hands and set it on the table, right before he stabbed Ukami Hitokage into it, pinning it there. Blood spurted out of the hand as it twitched and moved frantically. It almost looked like an animal that had been caught in a trap. "Kaya!" Naruto blinked when he heard the completely and utterly unmanly squeal. He would have said that Gato screamed like a girl, but that would have been insulting females everywhere. Maybe it would be more accurate to say that he screamed like Sakura. Naruto pulled the blade out, slowly, getting another, louder and longer squeal out of the man. The blonde rolled his eyes as he listened to the fat midget. It was obvious he had never gone through any toughening up process before. This was likely the first time Gato had ever had to deal with people actually trying to kill him. It took nearly 10 minutes before the man could actually carry on a conversation again. "Please, please. I'll give you anything you want. Money, women, you name it." "Ah, negotiation," Naruto said. He had seen the people he interrogated do this tons of times. This was the part where they realized there was nothing they could do to save themselves, but still tried anyways. The denial phase, Akane had jokingly referred to it as. Naruto just gave a pitying sigh, shaking his head back and forth very slowly. Gato, you don't quite seem to understand yet. I am the one holding all the cards. You already know what I want, the only question is, how long will I have to make you suffer before I get it?" Naruto pressed his blade against Gato's arm and began to cut along it, drawing a thin line of blood, and making the fat man freak out and begin squealing again. Stopping, Naruto said, "I can do this all day. I don't even have to draw blood to torture you. Did you know that the body is made up of 90% water? All it would take was a little lightning chakra and I could light you up like a Christmas tree. You wouldn't die, but it would be quite painful." "All right." Gato shouted, tears streaming down his face. "All right. Just no more. Please, no more. I just need the key in the bottom left-hand drawer. It's to my vault." Naruto got the key and then had Gato lead him to the vault, keeping the blade resting against the man's neck as they walked. A constant reminder of what would happen should he attempt to run. The vault was in the basement. Naruto somewhat expected that. What he did not expect was the sheer amount of riches that were piled high within the room. There were large bars of gold stacked up to the ceiling, piles of jewels, large wads of cash and coin. Every form of money and riches imaginable was in this room. On one side, Naruto even saw a display case filled with weapons and armor. Gato walked over to a filling cabinet and started pulling out piles of thick portfolios which Naruto created a Kage Bunshin to help him carry over to one of the nearby desks. The businessman only hesitated for a moment, before Naruto drew some more blood from him with Hikage, and then he couldn't sign the deeds fast enough. It took the better part of 2 hours to complete all the paperwork, thanks to the sheer amount of business the man had gained control of over the years. Naruto had made sure that he was using his true signature by comparing it to earlier ones, so he was confident that there wouldn't be any trouble. When Gato had signed the last document he turned to plead to Naruto, but before he could even open his mouth Hikage flashed out as a streak of light and took his head. As the head rolled across the floor and the man's body began to fall to the ground, Naruto took out a blank scroll, unsealed his calligraphy brush, and wrote a containment seal. He then began sealing all of the documents inside of the scroll, before making 4 more scrolls and creating 4 clones. He handed a blank scroll to each of the clones. "Start sealing up all of these riches. I want you to be done by the time I get back." "Asu," the clone said as they grabbed the scrolls and got to work. Naruto looked at the body of Gato, which was beginning to leave a puddle of blood on the floor, dispassionately. He snapped his fingers and the body lit up, burning to ash and erasing Gato from existence. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. When Naruto walked back outside, it was to find Akane and Enko standing before a large group of women. A little ways away some Kage Bunshin of Akane were making liberal use of her Kitsunabe to burn the bodies of the thugs they had killed to cinders. The blonde walked over to Enko, who seemed to be trying, and failing, to comfort one of the women, one who couldn't be older than 16, there. "I think you're just making it worse," Naruto said from behind Enko, getting said purple-haired Jonin to turn and give him a slightly sheepish look. "That's what I said," Akane quipped as she gave Naruto a kiss on the cheek as a greeting. But she wouldn't listen and decided to give the girl the good old kunoichi pep talk. "Isn't that basically telling a girl, you got raped, get over it?" asked Naruto curiously. "Pretty much," Akane said. "Hey!" Enko shouted indignantly, "I was just trying to help." "Trying, and failing," Akane shot back, making Enko puff up her cheeks and give an angry look that looked more cute than angry. "How many women are there?" asked Naruto, heading off another one of his mate's teasing sessions. "There are 40 women," Enko stated, "including the ones from inside the mansion that your clones escorted out." "What about where they're from?" asked Naruto. "They're all from various countries of the elemental nations," Akane spoke up, having been the one who talked to the women the most. "Some are from here, but most are from Hai no Kuni, Mizu no Kuni, apparently they were captured during the Civil War, and Omi no Kuni, Land of the Sea." Naruto sighed and mumbled, "It will be difficult to try and find all of their families." Shaking his head he looked at Akane, "Have they all been healed up?" "We did what we could. But you know neither of us are medics, we only used basic field medical procedures and bandaged them up. A few will likely need a contraceptive jutsu as well, but Enko can apply those." She looked at him and knew what he was thinking. "Those who are from Nami, we can just escort back to their homes, but the ones that are out of country will likely need to stay here until either we can escort them, or someone else can." "Those were my thoughts," Naruto said. "So then what should we do?" asked Enko, who had been listening to the conversation. Naruto frowned in thought. "Akane-kan, can you make a couple dozen Kage Bunshin?" When she gave him a, "Who the hell do you think you're talking to?" look, he rubbed the back of his head. "Right, well, do so." Akane rolled her eyes and made 3 dozen Kage Bunshin. Naruto made a few of his own clones and turned to the women who were watching them with varying amounts of gratitude and wariness. "Could I have your attention please? I would like all of you to follow the clones of Akane and myself. They'll show you to the unused and clean rooms in Gato's mansion for you to get some rest. Also, if any of you could volunteer to help them make some food for the rest of you, that would be greatly appreciated. I know all of you are weary, frightened and hurt. We're going to do our best to ensure that every one of you makes it back home safely to your families and loved ones. Just bear with us for now." It took an hour to get everyone sorted. 10 girls who had been wearing maid outfits, though given how skimpy and provocative they were they might as well have been naked, had volunteered to help Naruto and Akane's clones make some food for the rest. By the time everyone was settled in, the Kage Bunshin Naruto had created to seal all of Gato's riches had come out of the mansion and handed Naruto his scrolls. "Well, now all we have to do is get back to Tazuna's and then we can get some sleep," Enko said with a large grin. "Not quite sensei," Naruto chuckled a little, getting a curious stare from Enko. "Remember, Kakashi and his genin are at the bridge, Zabuza should be healed by now, and they don't know that Gato is dead." "Great," Akane groaned, "so instead of getting to have hot, passionate sex with you, we have to go and save the emotionless wonder, Emo Mabruti, and the shrieking banshee." "Sorry," Naruto said, giving her an apologetic smile. "But I wanted to, talk with Zabuza." Akane looked at him for a second before she grinned. "I should have figured that, huh? Well, let's get this over with. If I'm lucky we can still have sex afterwards." "Wait, what are we doing?" asked Enko, looking back and forth between the 2 members of her squad, confused. Naruto smirked, we're going to make a nice deal with Zabuza, one that he can't refuse. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. It didn't take long for Naruto, Akane and Anko to reach the bridge where Kakashi and his genin squad were guarding the bridge builder. Gado's base of operations was only about 15 minutes away from the group when tree hopping at the pace an average jonin would make, and so they made it in record time. However, when they got to the bridge it was to see the battle between Zabuza and Kakashi already underway. Anko couldn't see much, her eyes were not demonically enhanced like the other two, so all she could do was squint as she heard the clang of metal against metal. Naruto and Akane however, could see everything that was going on as clear as day. The scene before them was definitely odd, in all of their time together neither had really seen a scene quite like this. On one side of bridge was a large dome of mirrors that looked like they were made of ice. Yes, ice. Within that dome was Sasuke Uchiha, aka Imonkbruder. Currently, young Sasuke was lying face down, looking like a pin cushion as several hundred senbon were pierced in every part of his body. He looked dead. The only reason Naruto and Akane knew he was, in fact, alive, much to their mutual disappointment, was because he was still producing light pheromones, which all humans produce when alive. Sai was surprisingly still fighting, he was using some kind of ink beasts to attack. They were largely ineffective against the Hunter-nin, but they served as a good distraction. On the other side of the bridge was Zabuza and Kakashi battling it out, with Sakura and Tazuna several feet away. The battle looked to be something of a stalemate at the moment. Zabuza seemed unable to get any really good hits in on Kakashi, while Kakashi couldn't even see Zabuza. So, what should we do? Asked Akane, wondering what their game plan should be. I got this. Naruto stepped forward, no one had noticed them yet, but they would soon. Oi! Zabuza! The yell resounded across the bridge, halting both fights in their tracks as everyone turned and stared at the three people who had appeared on the bridge without them knowing. Naruto. Akane. Haku mumbled, it was barely a whisper and just loud enough for Sai to hear. The emotionless boy filed away the knowledge that this Hunter-nin knew them for the report he would give to Danzo. Who the hell is this brat? Wondered Zabuza while. Kakashi stared at the group in surprise. I've got a present for ya. Naruto lobbed the sack he had been carrying at Zabuza, who jumped back in case it was some kind of trap. It rolled a few feet before coming to a stop. Zabuza looked at it attentively, causing Naruto to chuckle. It won't bite, you know. Naruto walked the rest of the way onto the bridge, where the main battle had been taking place. As he moved, his gait slow and steady, he sent a burst of wind chakra out and cleared away the mist, surprising Zabuza and Kakashi. Who the hell are you, brat? Growled Zabuza. I don't really think that matters right now, Naruto chuckled a little. What does matter is that your battle with Kakashi is over. What? Zabuza looked at the kid like he had grown several heads. What makes you think I'll stop for some brat like you? Well, I figured since you won't be getting paid anymore there's really no reason to fight. The blonde shrugged and offered the larger swordsman a grin. After all, Gado's dead. He then pointed at the bag and Zabuza only just now realized what was likely in the bag. Moving forward he grabbed the bag and opened it, finding the bloody head of Gado inside. He growled as he realized that he had just done all of this fighting for nothing. And now the advantage he had was gone. With that kid here, whoever he was, he could no longer hide in the mist. There was also something about this kid that unnerved him a little, though he would never say that out loud. I suppose this battle is now pointless, he growled, wondering if Kakashi would just let him leave. However, Naruto had other plans. Not necessarily, the blonde said, grinning cheekily at him. I have a proposition for you, Zabuza, a bet, if you will. Zabuza eyed the boy warily. This kid had just come here, threw him the head of his employer and was now offering him some kind of proposition. Who the hell was this brat? Something inside of him, call it instinct, decided to hear the kid out. What kind of bet? He asked. The kind you'll like, Naruto replied as he pulled a scroll from his back and showed it to Zabuza. It was an average containment scroll, from what Zabuza could tell, but on the front was a seal was the kanji located on it. Within this scroll is over 10 million ryu, the eyes of everyone, with the sole exceptions of Akane, because she already knew that, Sai, because he had the emotional range of teaspoon, Sasuke, because he was still unconscious, and Sakura, mainly because she had just noticed said Uchiha was unconscious and was now crying over him, widened. My bet is this, you and I will fight one-on-one, kenjutsu only. You win, and all of this money is yours. Zabuza grinned at what he thought would be easy money. He hefted his sword on his shoulder, and if you win. A smirk made its way to Naruto's face as he grabbed the hilt of Ukami Hitokage, then you and Haku come back with us to become Konoha ninja. The blonde grinned as he saw. Zabuza's eyes widened in shock, obviously he had not been expecting that kind of demand. Still. At least you've got guts, brat, Zabuza chuckled, there was no way this kid could beat him anyways. He might have some tricks up his sleeves like that wind thing he did, but a kenjutsu battle against one of the Kirishinobigatana Nananin Shu was suicidal. Very well, I accept. Good, Naruto smirked as he slid down into the beginning stance of the Uzumaki clan's first kenjutsu form. For a moment all was still as the two warriors stared at each other. The tension in the air became palpable, so thick you probably couldn't cut it with a knife. Then, they charged. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Kakashi's eyes widened as he listened to Naruto's proposition. What the hell was he thinking? Challenging Zabuza Momoichi to a kenjutsu match, it was the dumbest move anyone besides maybe Kisame Hashigaki, another member of the Kirishinobigatana Nananin Shu, could make. He had to stop this before Naruto lost his life. However, just as he was about to move, two hands appeared on his shoulders. Turning, he saw both Enko and Akane restraining him. What are you two doing? He hissed, let go. We have to stop him before he gets killed. You need to have more faith in my mate, Hatakesen, Akane growled as she fed Yuki into her nails, lengthening and sharpening them so that they carved into the man's shoulder and drew a small amount of blood. When the man hissed in pain, the redhead added, do not think for 1 second that my mate would dare lose to anyone in a kenjutsu battle. While I'm not as defensive of the brat, I think we should trust that the blonde Gaki knows what he's doing, Enko said. This gained her an incredulous stare from Kakashi. You mean you're actually willing to let a genin fight against an A-rank ninja? Naruto has proven his strength to me, Enko said, shrugging. I've seen him in action, and while I've never seen him fight against someone Zabuza's caliber, I have faith that he knows what he's doing. She noticed that Kakashi still looked like he was about to argue, but she cut him off. If it gets to the point that it looks like he's going to lose, then we'll step in. Even with her reassurances, this still didn't sit well with Kakashi, but since Naruto was her genin, there was nothing he could actually do. He decided to watch, and when Naruto needed help he would step in and protect his sensei's son. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. You're not bad, brat, Zabuza commented as he and Naruto continued to trade strikes. After getting a taste for the larger man's combat style, Naruto had shifted gears to a more reactionary style. Zabuza tended to rely on slow, powerful swings. Of course, slow was a relative word. Most ninja wouldn't be able to swing a standard ninjato as fast as Zabuza could swing his zanbatsu. But to Naruto, the attacks were relatively slow. Why thank you, Naruto grinned as he redirected another swing of Zabuza's blade, tilting his sword at an angle that allowed the large zanbatsu to glance off the blonde's blade with minimal effort. He moved in with his own strikes as a form of retaliation, each one coming in faster than the next. However, Zabuza managed to block them by bringing his head cleaver back in and using the flat side of his zanbatsu. It wasn't long before he retaliated, pushing the blonde's blade out of the way when he finally managed to lock the smaller one with his. His swings came in wide, sweeping arches that whistled loudly as they sliced through the air. The few that Naruto didn't outright dodge, were redirected with his blade through subtle movements of his wrists. The giant head cleaver slid off his blade several times, generating a hiss of sparks as steel clashed against steel. When the series of attacks and counterattacks ended, both jumped back and eyed each other warily. They circled around the other, a pair of predators trying to find a weak spot within the other's guard. When they came back and both used a series of hard, powerful blows to try and knock the other off balance. Sparks flew from their swords as the two blades clashed against each other in a battle that was as much a matter of will as it was skill. So far neither seemed to have really landed a hit on the other. A few light scratches were on Zabuza's torso and Naruto's clothes had some cuts on them from a few close calls, but not much more than that. At the moment the pair of swordsmen were more or less feeling each other out, trying to find weaknesses in the other. Zabuza thought he had found one when Naruto left his torso unguarded and wide open when he raised his blade above his head to help redirect a particularly vicious swing. That was when Zabuza chose to act, spinning around on the balls of his feet and sending a reverse heel kick to the blonde Hanyu. Unfortunately for the missing Nin, Naruto had let his guard down on purpose. Just as the heel was about to make contact with his chest, the blonde twisted his body in a way that seemed to defy gravity, bending the joints in his leg until he was parallel with the ground. After that he lashed out with an attack of his own, coming in from the left with a sweeping kick and hitting the side of the man's kneecap. This resulted in a grunt of pain as the force of the blow spun Zabuza around, forcing him off balance. Another attack, Zabuza couldn't tell if it was a kick or punch, smacked him hard against the chest and he hit the ground hard. The Kiri missing Nin lay on his back, blinking as he tried to figure out what the hell just happened. He didn't have much time to think however, and his eyes widened as he saw the point of Naruto's black blade set to skewer him in the head. Rolling out of the way Zabuza pushed himself in a standing position, grabbing his blade on the way up. A good thing too, for as soon as he stood the blonde was already there, launching a series of fierce attacks at him. The attacks ranged from swift sword slashes and thrusts, to powerful blows that made Zabuza's bones rattle with each strike. It took a concerted effort to force the blonde shinobi to back off, giving the missing Nin some breathing room. "Damn, you're a pretty good kid," Zabuza complimented. It wasn't often he complimented someone. In fact, he couldn't remember the last time he had complimented anyone for their skills in battle that was not mocking. Still, the blonde was more than holding his own, and that was worthy of praise. Naruto chuckled as he changed stances. "Thanks, I guess. You're not bad yourself. However, now the real battle begins. Don't blink." And just like that Naruto was gone, no kicked up dust or water to signify him pushing off the ground, no swirl of leaves or puff of smoke for a shunshin, just gone. It was as if the blonde had just been erased from existence. It was only battle-hardened instincts that saved Zabuza from getting his head sliced off. Clang! "What the fuck?" shouted the missing Nin as he just barely got his sword up in time to block an attack from his left. He had to block another one from his right mere seconds after that, then from his left again, behind, in front, and left again. The attacks came in faster and faster, and Zabuza was finding it increasingly hard to defend himself, as shown by the several cuts from the strikes that were starting to get in. It wasn't long before he realized that he might actually lose this battle if he didn't think up something quick. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Holy shit! Enko shouted as she watched the battle take place. Her eyes were wide as saucers as she watched Naruto turn up the heat and began turning Zabuza into a scratching post that looked like it had a bad encounter with Tora the demon cat. "I know I said I had faith in Nagaki's abilities, but damn. I'm curious to know how he got so powerful," Kakashi mumbled, eyeing the smiling red-haired beauty standing beside Enko. "Narukins always had a powerful drive to become stronger," Akane said with a smile. She discreetly rubbed her thighs together, watching her mate battle never failed to turn her on. "Ever since I met him he would push himself harder and harder. I actually couldn't come up with enough sadistic training exercises for him. Besides, this is a Kenjutsu match, and Narukin's an Uzumaki. Then that sword he's wielding is the famed Hitokage no Yaiba." Everyone turned at the question to see the masked hunter Nin looking at the battle. He really wanted to go help his master, but Zabuza would never forgive him if he entered a battle between two swordsmen. It was one of Zabuza's few taboos. Yes, it is, Akane said with a smirk. I've never heard of the Hidokage no Yaiba, said Enko, scratching the back of her head. What is it? It's the bloodline of the Uzumaki clan, Kakashi said, staring at Naruto with an intense gaze. Watching the blonde reminded him of another Uzumaki he had once seen, a vivacious and lively woman with blood-red hair and a fierce grin on her face, much like the one Naruto was wearing right now. A shudder went down his spine when he remembered sparring with said Uzumaki, and getting his ass so utterly handed to him it wasn't even funny. A powerful chakra-based bloodline that creates a sword made from the user's soul. The Uzumaki clan was highly secretive of its bloodline, so very few people knew about it. You seem to know more about it than most, Akane commented. Kakashi didn't look at the redhead as he continued watching the battle. I knew another Uzumaki once. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Zabuza was panting heavily now, his arms felt like lead, and he could barely even hold up his sword anymore. Cuts were littered across his body from Naruto's lightning-fast strikes, more than a few of them were actually quite deep. He was beginning to feel lightheaded from all of the blood loss he had just suffered. You lose, Zabuza, Naruto said. Zabuza looked up at the sound of the blonde's voice to see him pointing a sword to his throat. He grunted as he tried to lift his sword but found he couldn't. He sighed, I guess I do. Zabuza didn't particularly like admitting defeat, especially against some brat, but there really wasn't much choice. Fine brat, you win. Now don't be like that, Naruto chuckled as he resheathed his sword. It's not every day you fight an Uzumaki. An Uzumaki? Zabuza's eyes widened. He had been fighting an Uzumaki this whole time. No wonder he had lost. Well fuck, he mumbled as Naruto walked away, grinning as he heard Zabuza swear. He walked over to where the others were staring at him with shocked expressions. Well, everyone except Sai, again, emotional range of a teaspoon, and Akane, who looked like she was about to rip his pants off and take him right there on the bridge. He grinned widely, so I guess we're done here, right? Over the next week or so the members of Team 7 continued to guard Tazuna as he built his bridge, though Sasuke complained a lot about how pointless the job was since Gato was dead. As always Sakura agreed with her crush, much to the chagrin of Kakashi, who told them to shut up or he wouldn't teach them anymore. It seemed to work as the two did their job after that, albeit reluctantly. The only member of Team 7 who didn't seem to have problems was Sai, who did his job quietly and efficiently. During that time Naruto and his Kage Bunshins had gone over the documents, deeds and files that they had found in Gato's mansion. It was during his reading of said documents that the blonde had come to one conclusion: Gato might have been able to bully his way to the top and had some business smarts, but he was completely lacking in common sense. Not only did he keep the deeds and documents to every company he owned, both legal and illegal, with him at all times, he also wrote down the names of all the people who owed him favors, people he had blackmail on, or people he had bought out with his money. The list held the names of high-ranking members of several countries, including several people within the courts of the various daimyos, including the daimyo for Hai no Kuni. Naruto realized that was how the man's bandits had most likely been able to continue kidnapping women for their slave ring for so long without getting attacked. The amount of corruption made Naruto wonder how far people would go for money and power. The other thing he had done was have a Kage Bunshin sit down with Tazuna and take care of the paperwork for the shipping company. Naruto felt that the people of Nami were the ones who deserved run of that company the most, not only because it would help them get back on their feet, but because Nami no Kuni had always been one of the more used trade routes for ships. As it turned out, the old man was actually pretty competent when it came to managing a business, having picked up a bit due to his work as a freelance engineer. Between the two of them they had been able to organize and write out a new plan for the company, which had been renamed Nami Fun Sur, Nami Shipping Company. Now the company belonged to the people of Nami as a whole. The people would elect a manager and a board of employees, a group of 7 people including the manager that would be in charge of the direction the company took. The job had required Tazuna to speak with his people, and during that time it would not be surprising for 10 or 20 other people to be inside of the small house. Eventually, everything was put into place, and Tazuna, being one of the newly dubbed heroes of Nami, had been selected as Nami Funsure's first manager. After speaking about it with Akane and Enko, the three had decided to raid the safe house that Gato had set up in Nami. It had only been a mile or two away from Gato's mansion, and held even more jewels and money than the mansion itself. The members of Team 12 had proceeded to raid the safe house and then gave the money away to the people of Nami so they could get back on their feet while the new company they had got started. Feeling that the rest of the information on Gato's company and the people he had in his pocket could be useful, Naruto sealed it up inside of a seal on his inner thigh, which was covered with a powerful genjutsu seal to make it invisible. Thanks to his Yuki, not even the Byakugan or Sharingan would be able to see through the genjutsu. He created another file that held some of the information, enough to give Sarutobi to keep him occupied so that no one would think he was withholding information. The stuff he had kept for himself were the deeds to several other businesses, a few of which were in Konoha and refused him access when the blonde had tried purchasing necessities and supplies, the list of people in Gato's pocket outside of Hai no Kuni, and half of the safe houses that had been set up within Hai no Kuni. Haku and Zabuza had both been unsure of what to do during this time, having been so used to being not only on the run, but free to make their own choices. They didn't know whether they should help everyone else or keep to themselves. Thankfully, that particular problem was solved by Naruto and Akane, who had taken to spending time with the two when they were not working. Anko would join occasionally, but because the red-haired demoness still pestered the Jonin about her sex life with Naruto, an action which caused severe blood loss from Zabuza and Haku, she usually hung out with Kakashi, at least when he wasn't with his brats, all of three of whom she couldn't stand. Zabuza and Naruto had taken well to each other, both being skilled swordsmen. The two would often be found sparring against each other. The Kiri missing Nin had been shocked and appalled that he had lost to someone who looked only 12 years old. Naruto had not told him about his status as a half-demon, so the blonde couldn't really fault the man for wondering if he had gotten rusty and just offered to spar until he got back up to par. Haku had been another thing entirely. He still had trouble looking at Naruto and Akane without blushing. Of course, they had not made the task of doing so easy. Both had teased the boy mercilessly, telling him it was fine since he had not actually seen them. They also threatened him with castration if he actually did see anything, which had never ceased to make the boy's red face go deathly pale. Other than those small altercations, however, he got along with the duo quite well. They had even shared some of each other's past with each other. Naruto and Akane learned that Haku had lived in a small village within Mizu no Kuni, and his mother had been a member of the Yuki clan, a ninja clan that had been capable of using Hayatan, ice release, which was the ability to combine wind and water chakra to create ice jutsu. Haku's mother had done her best to keep her ability a secret, knowing that, at the time, Kirigakure had an intense fear and hatred of bloodlines. However, Haku had discovered this ability and been so ecstatic he had shown it to her. She had been so fearful that she smacked him and told him to never use that ability again. Unfortunately, Haku's dad had also seen what he had done and formed a mob. They killed his mother and would have killed Haku too, had he not used his Hayatan manipulation to create several large ice spikes and kill his father and the rest of the mob. After that he had traveled and was eventually discovered by Zabuza, who had decided to take him on as an apprentice. In return, Naruto and Akane told some stories of their own. They did not reveal as much as Haku had, not yet anyways. The two planned on telling their sensei the truth about their status soon, and would tell Haku then, but felt it best to keep it a secret until that time. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Are sure you three want to leave now? Asked Tazuna. It was the second week since Naruto and the others had come to Nami no Kuni. Well, since Team 12 had come to Nami, and the group had decided that it was time to go home and report. The bridge isn't even complete yet, and while I know there's no danger anymore, I'd feel much safer with you guys than the Cyclops and his brats. The man's words caused Naruto and Akane to snicker, while Anko coughed and tried not to laugh. When they got under control, it was Naruto who said, "We don't have much choice. Our mission was to kill Gato, now that it's complete we need to return and give our report. We need to be especially quick considering all the pies that greedy little midget had his hands in. Isn't calling someone little and midget kind of redundant? Asked Akane in a teasing voice. Naruto shot her a glare, though there was no real malice behind it, not for him, Akane-kan. He turned back to Tazuna. Anyways, it's also important because the Hokage will need to contact the daimyo of Hai no Kuni to work out a way to escort all of the women from our country back home, and the daimyo will have to contact the other daimyos for the same reason. It's going to take a lot of time and effort, but the sooner we get back the sooner they can get the ball rolling. We also have to escort Zabuza and Haku back as well, Enko added. Having just finished her dango she was now able to speak again. They both agreed to become Konoha ninja and we need to get them registered, because Kiri is still out of contact with the rest of the world. We need to make sure the two are entrenched enough in Konoha that if we ever do hear from them we can inform them that the two are no longer to be considered missing nin. It was a surprisingly common practice for one village to take in the missing ninja of another. Most ninja who abandon their village don't normally do so without a good reason, because they know that if they leave the village the hunter ninja will be after them. The few that do usually leave do so because of a conflict with their morals, they're forced to do something they don't agree with and leave. Most end up joining another village so they can receive the protection that comes with being from a ninja village. Tazuna sighed. I suppose I understand. It will be a lot different without you guys here. That was a fact. Between Naruto and Akane's antics, their teasing of Enko and the way they constantly use sexual innuendo in their talk had made the household very different. His daughter couldn't even look at the whiskered blonde anymore without blushing. We may visit sometime so it's not like you won't ever see us again, Naruto said with a shrug. He blinked for a second as the older man held out a hand, before taking it in with a grin. You 3, 5, Tazuna corrected as he saw Zabuza and Haku coming down the stairs. Take care of yourselves. We will, Enko commented before grinning at her genin and the two others who were coming back with her. Alright. It's time to get this show on the road. I want to be at least halfway to Konoha by nightfall. With a skip in her step she bounded out of the house, leaving the others to stare at her retreating back. Is she always this excitable? Asked Haku with a sweat drop. Yes, Naruto nodded. Yes she is. You haven't spent enough time with her to know, but she's usually worse than this. Haku raised an eyebrow as he and the other three that were traveling back to Konoha walked out the door. Worse than you and Akane-san. We're not that excitable, Akane said with a scoff, as if she were offended that Haku could even think about her and her mate like that. We just really like sex. Both Haku and Zabuza stumbled a bit before righting themselves, one with a blush clear on his face and the other trying to hide how disgruntled he was that these two brats were having so much sex and he was getting nothing. Aren't you gakis too young to have sex? He asked with a raised eyebrow. Old enough to kill, old enough to die, old enough to drink, old enough to fuck like rabbits in heat. Akane finished Naruto's sentence. Said blonde glared at her, thank you dear. Akane blew him a kiss, you're welcome honey. Oi. Get your asses moving. Enko's voice bellowed out from within the tree line. Coming. Naruto and Akane shouted before they bounded off, the two missing nin following behind them a moment later. They weren't sure if coming to Konoha was such a good idea anymore, but at the very least, it had to be better than staying on the run. If nothing else, the antics of the trio they found themselves in the company in were amusing. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. The trip back to Konoha hadn't taken very long, about 3 days all total. They could have gone faster but Naruto felt it would be better to slow down so he and Enko could give Zabuza and Haku a lowdown of what was likely to happen when they reached Konoha. True to form, the moment the group of 5 stepped through the gate, a squad of ANBU appeared before them, all placing a hand on some kind of weapon as they surrounded Zabuza. Whoa! Enko held up her hands in an ease-off gesture. Relax Kamasen, she said to the bare-masked ANBU who had the captain's cloak on. Zabuza's with us. What is an A-rank missing ninja doing here with you? Asked Kuma. It was hard to tell where he was looking thanks to the mask. All ANBU masks have a seal on them that make it impossible to see through the eye holes. They can see through them just fine, but you can't. Despite that, Naruto got the distinct impression he was glaring a hole into Zabuza's head. "I'm here because my partner and I are sick and tired of running from the Ana ninja," Zabuza said, gesturing to Haku who, as always remained unfailingly polite and bowed to the ANBU before them as if they weren't pointing a bunch of sharp and pointy objects their way. "We were offered the chance to join Konoha and decided to take it." Naruto snorted at that, remembering exactly how he had convinced Zabuza to join the village. The bare-masked ANBU deliberated for several seconds before nodding. "Very well, because of your status as an A-rank missing ninja, however, myself and my squad will escort the 5 of you to Hokage-sama." Naruto didn't really think it was necessary. They had been traveling with the two for 3 days and Zabuza had taken his own watch shift and never did anything that would have harmed them. But he knew this was more or less protocol, or it would be if they ever got an A-rank missing ninja in their ranks. Most A-ranks preferred not being tied down to a village because they were the ones that were good enough to evade the Unin that were sent after them. They made their way to the Hokage mansion and Naruto got a good show at seeing the reaction of people in the village when Zabuza, surrounded by the ANBU, strolled through. Most of the civilians didn't give more than a passing glance, curious, but not much else. They didn't know who Zabuza Momoichi was, and so they didn't really care. However, the ninja were an entirely different story. Those ninja who were off duty all stopped and stared at the famed Kirigakure no Oni, demon of the hidden mist, in shock. A few had even stumbled and whirled around to get a second look. Naruto chuckled, "It seems you're pretty popular, any Zabuza?" "Course I am Gaki," Zabuza grunted in his gruff voice, "I'm the demon of the mist." Right, Naruto said. "We all know, you're a big bad demon." "Ah, I think he seems more like a puppy," Akane said, looking over at Haku, "or just a big stuffed teddy bear." "What do you think, Hakusen?" Haku coughed several times and flushed in embarrassment, unsure whether to laugh at Akane's jab at his sensei, or feel offended. "Haha, you're a funny girl," Zabuza grumbled as they finally made it to the Hokage's office. The girl at the front looked at all of them in wonder and waved them in. After all, it wasn't every day that an entire squad of ANBU escorted someone to the Hokage. Kuma opened the door. The rest of his squad, plus Naruto, Akane and Enko all entered before he himself went in as well. Hiruzen Sarutobi was sitting at his chair, as per usual, smoking his pipe and seemingly relaxed and uncaring about being face to face with the infamous Zabuza. Not that he had anything to fear. Zabuza knew that even if he could defeat the ANBU and Team 12, the man sitting at the desk could kill him before he could blink. The Kiri swordsman respected very few people, but this man was one of them. "What's up, Ajisen?" Naruto greeted with a large grin as he stopped in front of the Hokage's desk, completely breaking the tension the ANBU all felt. Meanwhile, Zabuza began hacking and coughing in shock at hearing the Kami no Shinobi being called old man. He was unsure whether he should laugh or feel horrified. The whiskered blonde ignored all of it. "Of course, did you miss me?" Sarutobi chuckled at the blonde, "Leave it to Naruto to be the one who destroyed the tension others felt with his uncaring attitude. Kami-sama really broke the mold when she created him. "It's good to see you, Naruto-kun," he said in greeting. "It seems you have quite the story to tell." The old man looked over at Zabuza for a moment before turning to the genin team, "Like, how you got the Kirigakure no Oni to come with you to Konoha." The members of Team 12, with a little help and correlation by Zabuza and Haku, spent the next hour or so filling Sarutobi in on their mission to kill Gato. From their first arrival to their infiltration mission to when they got to the bridge where Zabuza was fighting Kakashi. When they were finished, the Sandaime Hokage looked at Naruto with a deadpan look. "So let me get this straight," he said, after getting to the bridge. Naruto-kun challenged Zabuza to a Kenjutsu match. If he won, Zabuza would have to come with you and become a Konoha ninja, but if he lose he would have had to give away several million ryu. "Is that about right?" Pretty much, yeah, Akane said with a devilish grin. Both she and Naruto smirked and they heard the two male ANBU that were surrounding Zabuza gulp. The Sandaime shook his head, only with you, Naruto-kun. Only you could possibly convince a member of the Kirishinobi Gatana Nananin Shu to become a Konoha ninja. I know, Naruto said, buffing his nails, I'm awesome like that. Now that leaves the question of what to do with you two, Sarutobi said, looking over at Haku and Zabuza. Hakusen is not a registered ninja, so he can become a Konoha shinobi right now. The report I was given leaves enough evidence to know that he is highly skilled and could most likely become a chunin of the village. Actually, we were hoping you'd let him join our squad, Naruto said, bringing attention back to himself. As you know, a two-man squad can't take the chunin exams, we still need another member and we hoping Haku could be that member. It only took a moment of deliberation for Sarutobi to agree with that proposal. That makes sense. Very well, Hakusen will fill in the slot as the last member of Team 12. Reaching into the left-hand drawer under his desk, he pulled out the same form he had Akane fill out when she registered as a ninja. Just fill out this form and give it back to me. I'll schedule a date for you to get your ninja ID and you'll be an official shinobi of Konoha. Haku took the form with a bow. Thank you, Sandaime-sama. Think nothing of it, Sarutobi waved the thanks off. As far as he was concerned, this boy was doing them a favor by joining his village. Now, because Zabuza is listed in the bingo books, it will be a little more complicated. He looked at the Kiri swordsman. I'm afraid you'll have to go through a 90-day probation period before I can let you join. I will also have to set up an appointment with one of my interrogation specialists to give you an interview. It won't be anything too strenuous, just standard questions to ensure you won't betray the village. It's standard protocol, you understand. That's fine, Zabuza sighed, there was no point in arguing over something trivial like that. He had given his word on his honor as a swordsman that he would join Konoha, and if that meant he had to have a probation period, then so be it. At least he would get the chance to rest and not have to worry about the Unin coming after him. Very well, Sarutobi started again. The last issue we have to deal with is deciding where you two are going to live. Already figured out Ajisen, Naruto said, they can live in my apartment complex. That works, Sarutobi said, then paused. Is there anything else that you all need to share with me? Just one, Naruto channeled chakra into one of the containment seals on his wrist. A pop and a puff of smoke later, he had a thick file in his hand. He set the file on the desk, that contains all of the information on Gato's operations in Nami, including info on his slave trade, the people he had in his pocket and the names of the people working under him. As Sarutobi picked up the folder, the blonde continued, you'll see when you get to the names of people he bought out or blackmailed that he has a number of people within the daimyo's court, so you may want to contact him with this information so he can either clean house, or use it for his own benefit. Sarutobi's eyes scanned the information as he nodded. This would be a great boon towards cleaning out some of the corruption in Hai no Kuni's borders. Thank you, Naruto-kun, he said, this information will prove very useful. You are all dismissed. Naruto grinned as he turned to his two Suntobe apartment mates. Well, let's get you two settled into your apartments. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Holy shit. Naruto grinned at Zabuza and Haku, both of whom were currently gaping at their apartment. On the outside, the apartment complex was very unassuming. It was well maintained, thanks to the illusion that Akane had placed over it and the various seals that Naruto had placed along the floor, walls and ceiling. It was very clean and looked about as good as any other building in the neighborhood. But that was it, there didn't seem to be anything spectacular about it. However, the rooms in the apartment were, in a word, stunning. The room Naruto had given them looked much more like what they would expect to find on the inside of the daimyo's palace. With dark red, beautiful-looking carpet, soft cream-colored walls and ceiling, beautifully crafted furniture and top-of-the-line equipment, the place was a dream come true. Especially for two people who had been on the run for several years. I'm glad you like it. Naruto's voice was full of mirth and Akane was snickering at the dumbstruck looks of their companions' faces. The blonde gave them a moment to gape at their surroundings before he began his explanation of the room. Each room has been expanded with seals. The entire apartment is around an acre large, give or take. There are 2 stories, 4 bedrooms and a guest room, 4 bathrooms, a training room, a library though that is empty until you fill it, a study, a kitchen and a living room. The missing Nin and his apprentice both gave dumb nods and Naruto grinned. As you can see, everything is brand new, top quality equipment. I've lined every area with seals for comfort, and the training room has Jikoshizuzu Fuyin, self-repairing seals, on them, so you can abuse the area as much as you want and they'll repair themselves so long as you have enough chakra to power the seals. He paused for a moment in contemplation before shrugging. We'll let you get settled down. In a few hours, if either of you want, we'll give you a tour of Konoha. Our room number is 201, come on Akane-kan. The 2 demons left their new companions and headed to their own apartment room. As soon as they entered, they released their forms, changing into their original forms. Naruto sighed in relief as his tails grew out of his back and his wolf ears popped back onto the top of his head. Kami, why do my tails feel so stiff? You're just not used to keeping your true form hidden for so long, Akane explained. Your tails represent your power, so when they're suppressed it feels unnatural. You'll get used to it eventually. I hope so, Naruto muttered as the pair went up the stairs, towards the bedroom. So what do you want to do now that we're back? Asked Akane with a grin as she wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her chest against his back. Naruto did his best to ignore the way her breasts were pressing against him. It was rather hard to do when her hardened nipples were rubbing against you. I think I want to go and get some ramen. Akane smacked him on the chest, hard. Ow, he rubbed his chest in mock hurt. That's what you want to do? Akane huffed, letting go of him and spinning the blonde around. We just got back from a 2-week mission and you want to have ramen? Well, I haven't had a chirakus in a long time, Naruto defended himself, 2 weeks in fact. Akane's eye twitched, whatever. Fine, go get your ramen. I don't care what you do. Don't be like that, Naruto said, we had sex almost every day on our mission. It's different than having sex in your own bed, Akane mumbled. Naruto rolled his eyes, I think you're just a nymph. Seriously Akane, you always want to have sex. I do not. Akane crossed her arms under her breasts, pushing them up. Okay then, when was the last time you had a conversation in it that didn't mention the 2 of us having sex or was laced with innuendo? Asked Naruto. Akane opened her mouth to tell him when she paused. The last time she had said anything to him that did not have anything to do with sex was before Naruto had stumbled upon her bathing when he was 8. Naruto grinned when she turned red with embarrassment, see my point? Fine, so I like sex, she admitted. Are you saying you would rather eat ramen than screw my brains out? As an answer to her question Naruto walked up to her, not even stopping his movement as he hooked one arm under her legs, the other around her shoulder and swept the red-haired beauty off her feet. Akane didn't even get a chance to squeak as the blonde leaned in and gave her one those soul-shattering kisses that he had gotten so good at. Akane moaned loudly as she wrapped her arms around his neck, her toes curled and uncurled as tingles raced through her body and heat began to well up inside of her loins. When they parted she looked up at Naruto with half-lidded, lust-filled eyes to see a crooked grin on his face. So does that mean we're having sex? She asked. Naruto's grin widened, nope. We're going to get some ramen. With that he dropped her on the bed and raced off, leaving Akane to stare after him with a dumbfounded look on her face. A tick mark soon grew on her head as she jumped off after him. Naruto, get your ass back here. Story of the 10-tailed wolf. Naruto grinned as he polished off another bowl of ramen, drinking all of the broth and setting the bowl back down. I feel so much better, he sighed as he patted his stomach. I'm glad someone's feeling better, Akane mumbled in a depressed and angry voice as she stirred her bowl of ramen with her chopsticks. Ah, come on Akane-kan, the blonde said as he looked over at his mate, you're not still upset are you? However, the redhead just ignored him. Naruto sighed as he grabbed her by the waist and pulled her into his lap, eliciting a squawk of surprise and indignation. "Put me down," Akane commanded as Naruto's arms wrapped themselves firmly around her waist. "Let go. You're so stubborn," Naruto mumbled as secured her arms to keep her from trying to hit him, something she had done in an effort to force him to let go. "Just because you didn't get your way, doesn't mean you have to act like a petulant child." Akane jumped huffed, though the whiskered shinobi was pleased to see she had stopped trying to get out of his grip. "Whatever," she mumbled, trying not to give in to her desire not to be mad at Naruto. It was difficult enough to do in the first place, and only became harder when he placed his lips at the base of her neck and kissed her. "I'll make it up to you when we get home," Naruto whispered in her ear, making the redhead feel a small shiver run down her spine. "Just don't be mad, okay?" He nuzzled into her neck, bringing a slight pink tint to her cheeks as a soft, breathy moan escaped from her mouth. "Could you two please not do that in here?" asked a stuttering and blushing Iam. "I have to agree with Iam-san," Haku added with his own blush. "I third that," Zabuza added gruffly, not that he actually cared what the two brats got up to, he just didn't want to see it. "You two are just jealous because I can have sex with the sexiest woman you'll ever meet whenever I want," Naruto said with a smirk. Zabuza scowled slightly, even though no one could see it, while Haku just blushed even more. "Or perhaps we just don't want to see you two getting all into each other," Haku shot back. "Yeah, I am agreed, haven't you two heard of public decency?" "No," Akane commented with a grin. "Somehow, I should have figured that," Ayama said with a depressed sigh. "Now can you two please pick up a different conversation and not, well, do what you two are doing?" "I suppose," Naruto said, setting his chin on Akane's shoulder. "I guess we should introduce the two with us." "Now he suggests doing that," Ayama muttered. Naruto ignored her and said, "The pretty boy with the long hair is Haku." Said boy felt unsure whether to take the blonde's words as a compliment or an insult, but didn't let it stop him from bowing his head at the girl. "And the one without the eyebrows is Zabuza." "Disrespectful gaki," said eyebrowless man grumbled. "Hello." Iam said to both of them, though Naruto and Akane noticed her eyes lingered on Haku longer than they did Zabuza. They stored the information away in the "Tease Iam" section of their minds for later perusal and use. "She's following you again," Akane suddenly commented, making the others look at her strangely. "Who?" asked Naruto before he noticed the look she was giving him and sighed. "Ah, her," realizing who she was talking about. "I have no clue what I'm going to do with that girl." "I'll talk to her," Akane said as she hopped off Naruto's lap after he let go of her. "Try not to be too hard on her," Naruto said as he watched his mate leave. Akane just began heading out of the small ramen stand, no promises. "Who are you two talking about?" asked Haku, wondering what was going on. "She's going to deal with my stalker," Naruto commented idly as he looked at Iam. "How about another bowl Nachan?" Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Hinata watched in envy as Akane sat on Naruto's lap. How she wanted that redhead to be her right now. How she hated Akane for stealing her Naruto. Why? Why was Naruto with that girl? Why was he with someone who could never understand him? Hinata had watched Naruto for years, ever since he started at the academy she had seen him struggle, yet he never gave up. Even when he was being made fun of by the other students, or when Mizuki would try to sabotage the blonde with his efforts, he always just shrugged it off and smiled. The first year that he had been in the academy she had grown to admire the whiskered-marked boy. She had seen how he had struggled, how he continued to try no matter how many times he failed. It wasn't fair, she had admired and watched him for years. Then this girl suddenly steps into the picture and wrapped Naruto around her fingers within a day. That girl didn't deserve his affection. So busy was she with her inner monologue that she hadn't even noticed Akane jump off Naruto's lap, nor did she notice when the redhead walked out of the bar, or when she disappeared and reappeared right behind her. Hinata didn't notice the girl's presence until Akane spoke up. "Hinata. Eep. Hinata whirled around in shock and soon found herself staring into the beautiful ruby-red eyes of Akane. The brunette gulped as she looked at the red head, so beautiful, so perfect. Hinata was insanely jealous of the girl's beauty. Though she was far too timid to admit it. Akane-san, Hinata stuttered, suddenly feeling slightly afraid of her previous thoughts, as if the red-haired demoness could feel them. She pressed her index fingers together and looked down at her shoes. A frown marred Akane's face as she decided just what she should say to this girl. Her feelings on the Hyuga girl were very mixed. On the one hand, she disliked people like Hinata, people who gave up just because they had a hard life. Akane knew very well what the girl's past was like, how her kidnapping and the subsequent death of the Kyumo ninja who did it traumatized her. How the girl's clan thought she was worthless because of her timid behavior due to that same incident. The redhead had forced Naruto to study up on all of the recent history of the people in his class, that way he knew everything important there was to know about whoever he would be teamed up with. It was a moot point now, but at the time, when they had no clue she would no longer be in the seal, it had been a good idea. This girl's life, while more difficult than say, a civilian, was nowhere near as arduous as someone like Naruto's, and it paled in comparison to her own. Unlike this girl, her mate only had one person to care for him before they had met, and in her opinion, the Hokage had done a piss-poor job of doing so. The only reason she was even congenial with the old man was because she understood that as the leader of a village, he didn't have the time to truly help raise a child. Her own life was no walk in the park either. No one but Naruto truly knew her well, even he had not been told everything. She had never truly gone into the horrors she had faced in her life, the wars she had seen, the untold deaths she had lain witness to, the number of people she herself had slain. Her life was not a pretty picture. The fact that Hinata couldn't seem to gather any courage, even after stalking her mate's Chishio Bunshin for 4 whole years, was pathetic. One would think that after watching the person they admired most it would, at the very least, help them stand on their own 2 feet. But not Hinata apparently. I'm not really sure how to say this, so I'm just going to say it, Akane started in a blunt tone. You need to move on. Mama, move on. Hinata knew what she was talking about, but was having trouble fathoming how she would move on. Naruto was the only ray of light in her life. How could this girl just ask her to do that? Yes, move on, Akane confirmed, this business of stalking my mate that you've been doing for the past 4 years. Hinata eeped at having someone call her out on how she followed Naruto, or his clone, wherever it went. It needs to stop, it's not doing him any favors and it's not doing you any favors. You spend so much time obsessing over him that you can't even stand on your own 2 feet. You need to grow up and stop following Naruto-kun. Akane was just about to turn away when Hinata yelled at her, or at least, what consisted as a yell for the timid Hyuga girl. How could you say that? And now Naruto-kun is the person that I admire most. He inspires me to do better. And how has that worked out for you? Asked Akane with a raised eyebrow. Have you improved any? Has your Juken gotten better? Are you a better shinobi after watching Naruto for the past 4 years? When Hinata didn't answer, Akane shook her head, of course not. You've spent so much time obsessing over him that you spent no time bettering yourself. You're just like all the girls that follow. She stopped, shook her head and corrected herself, that used to follow the Uchiha. Spending too much time worrying about their love life than learning how to be a ninja. That's not true, Hinata mumbled. 2V always tried to improve. To get better, ever since I met Naruto-kun. He inspires me. And yet, despite the fact that you should have been the #1 kunoichi of your class, you're only ranked in the middle of your graduating class, Akane said. You let a civilian, a pink-haired, shrieking banshee who spends more time swooning over a boy who will never love her than being a ninja beat you. She watched as Hinata looked back down at the ground and scoffed, walking away. She never noticed the look of loathing on Hinata's face. Harsh much, said Naruto as Akane walked back into the stand. He had not heard all of what they had said, even his hearing was not that good, but he had been able to get the gist of it through lip reading. Couldn't though you have, I don't know, said that a little more gently. You're too soft, Akane said as she retook her place on his lap. People like Hinata need a good kick in the ass or they'll never amount to anything, they'll remain weak throughout their entire lives. If she truly wants to be strong then she'll take my words to heart. For once, I agree with Red, Zabuza said. Whether he agreed with her because it was the only time he had heard the demoness speak without mention her, Naruto and sex was unknown. Naruto looked over at Haku who noticed this just shrugged and went back to his eating. He had never really had any experience in situations like this, so it wasn't like he could give them an informed opinion on the matter. Realizing that no one really had anything to say, the blonde decided to drop it and got back to his food. After they had all finished eating, Naruto and Akane took the pair on a tour of Konoha, showing them the different districts and some of the more historic sites in the village. The blonde also showed them some of the places he had pranked, going into vivid descriptions of his nefarious pranks on the people of Konoha. Even Zabuza couldn't keep from laughing when he heard of some the shit Naruto had pulled. By the time they had finished it was much later in the evening and the sun was beginning to set. Naruto and Akane parted ways with the two former missing ninja and made their way up the Hokage monument. Plopping down on the Yandame's head they sat in what had become their standard position, Naruto leaning against one of the pieces of hair that was spiking up with Akane in between his legs, leaning against him while his arms were securely wrapped around her waist and her head was tucked under his chin. So what are you going to do with that information? Asked Akane as they watched the setting sun paint a golden red hue across the sky. She felt lulled by the warmth her mate radiated. It was very tempting to just close her eyes and go to sleep like this, just lying in his arms. I've got some plans running through my head at the moment, Naruto replied, having a good hunch of what information she was talking about. Nothing definite yet, and we'll need those travel rights so we can leave the village before anything can happen. Akane hummed as she closed her eyes. We could create Chishio Bunshins and let them take any missions that may come up while we head off to do whatever it is you've concocted. No, Naruto shook his head, a C-rank mission may not be that dangerous but I don't want to risk it. While the possibility is low, it is plenty possible that we could be sent on a higher-ranked mission. I don't want the possibility of people finding out we can make clones like that. Not only would others try and learn it, but it would let Ajisen know that we may have done more than just leave the village for a few days at a time. I don't want even a hint of my stint in Kiri coming out. I guess you have a point, she murmured. The pair went silent after that, waiting until the sun set before going back to their apartment. Story of the Ten-Tailed Wolf. Sarutobi sighed as he listened to the council bickering like a bunch of children. Not that this was anything new, the Konoha council had been arguing ever since he had retaken the position of Hokage after the Kyuubi, Akane, attacked the village. Kami, it was still taking him some time to adjust to calling the Kyuubi by her name, or even just thinking of the Kyuubi as a her. I believe we should place Haku under the CRA, Danzo stated, trying to make his case. This was what the argument had been about for a while now. What to do about Zabuza's young apprentice? It had been several days since the two had arrived in Konoha and the council had somehow managed to get wind of the pair joining the shinobi forces. Not that learning about them was that hard, they had been seen wandering the village, sometimes with Naruto and Zabuza, and said blonde had taken to sparring in training ground 30, as was often evidenced by the number crater pools that had littered the ground. The Kiri swordsman himself had been an easy problem to solve. With no word coming out of Kiri, and no knowledge about whether or not they were still embroiled in a civil war, Konoha could easily afford to place Zabuza within their ranks and suffer no repercussions from Kirigakure. After he had been given a standard interview with Ibiki, they had let Zabuza go. He would still be watched, but only for 90 days to determine whether or not he would be a threat to the village. However, Haku was a much more difficult problem to solve, mainly because of his bloodline. Sarutobi was troubled about how they learned of the young boy's bloodline. Ever since Naruto had first discovered the seal under his table, the Hokage had made sure to constantly search his office for more seals before he started his day. That he hadn't found any suggests one of the ANBU under his command may not be under his command. A troubling thought in and of itself. If we can have him impregnate multiple women, we could begin harness the power of his Kekkei Genkai when they get older, the war horse continued. It would add another addition to our clans, and Konoha would be that much more powerful. I say we let him join one of our clans, said a member of one of the Kaitachi clan's council member. The Kaitachi clan were a clan of merchants. They owned the largest chain of grocery and convenience stores in Konoha and were also one of the clans whose hatred of Naruto was well known. Sarutobi had been at odds with them many times, and their last council member had been one of the people that had been responsible for the meeting he had been in during Naruto's attack, and was summarily executed for it. Since then they had kept quiet about the blonde, but they had argued with the aging Hokage on many more points. The clan was also very greedy. They had always wanted the power and prestige that came with being a part of a ninja clan. You just want him to become your puppet so you can earn a seat on the clan's council, Sum said with a slight growl. Sum Inuzuka was the head of the Inuzuka clan, a ninja clan that had a close partnership with dogs, and was Kiba's mother. Sum was a Tokubetsu Jonin and like all members of her clan had an animalistic look to her. She had long spiky brown hair, vertical slit-like pupils, elongated canine teeth and nails. She also had the clan Fong markings on her cheeks as well as markings over her eyes and a dark shade of purple lipstick. She wore the standard outfit of a Konoha shinobi. Sitting next to her chair was her Nindog partner Kuramaru, an adult cannon with a wolfish appearance. As his name would suggest, he had black fur. He was missing his left ear, along with his right eye, over which he wore an eye patch. Everyone knows you merchants are a bunch of greedy bastards, the women continued, getting Hikura Kaitachi to scowl at the woman. You people are never satisfied with what you have, always wanting more. Then what would you suggest? Asked the scowling merchant. I say we let him choose whether or not to create a clan, said Inoichi Yamanaka, the clan head of the Yamanak clan and the former head of the Konoha torture and interrogation forces. Inoichi had long blonde hair that reached all the way down to his lower back, which was spiky on top and ended in a long ponytail. He had green-blue eyes and strong facial features, which included a well-defined jawline. His outfit consisted of the standard flak jacket and over a black outfit, complete with handguards, forehead protector and a sleeveless red coat. Forcing someone into something is not a good way to ensure the loyalty of our shinobi, he continued. I have already had the chance to speak with Hikusen. As someone who specialized in the inner working of the human mind, it was standard procedure for Inoichi to interrogate all missing nin who wished to join Konoha. From what I can gather, he doesn't enjoy using his bloodline. In fact, thanks to how his father tried to kill him because of it, he is very uncomfortable even discussing his Kekkei Genkai. It would not be wise to force him into anything that would promote his bloodline abilities. Many of the council members scowled at the man, however, even the dumbest member of the council knew it would be unwise not to heed his warning. What do you suggest we do? Asked Sarutobi. Inoichi opened his mouth to speak again when he was interrupted by the doors to the council chambers opening. Everyone turned to see who it was and blinked in surprise as none other than Kurenai Yuhi. The reaction her appearance caused was varied. Many of the male civilian council members stared at her with open lust, the clan and shinobi council looked at her in interest, while the elders scowled at the intrusion. Jonin Yuhi, Koharu said in a commanding voice as she stood up, what do you think you're doing barging in on a council meeting like this? Kurenai looked up at the old woman with a raised eyebrow as she did her best to hide her scowl at the lustful look some of the men were giving her. Flashback. Kurenai frowned as she sat down in her seat at a small bistro, waiting for her friend Enko. Though her thoughts weren't on her best friend at the moment, but rather her genin student Hinata. The girl had become even more withdrawn and seemed to be fluctuating between shame, timidity and anger, or at least as much anger as someone like Hinata could give. She was unsure just what to make of it, though she felt it may have something to do with the fact that Naruto was dating that Akane girl. Hey, Naken. Kurenai turned and smiled as she saw Enko walking over to her. though it turned into an expression of curiosity when she noticed Naruto, Akane and Haku with her. She pushed her thoughts of wonder aside as she stood up and greeted her best friend with a hug. "It's good to see you, Anko. It's been too long since we've actually been able to hang out." "Well, we both have a couple of brats to take care of, so it's rather difficult to plan anything," Anko said, rubbing the back of her head sheepishly. Kurenai nodded before looking at the two genin and the one unfamiliar boy. "I didn't expect you to bring any company." "Ah, well, they just sort of followed me," Anko spoke in an evasive manner. Kurenai knew her friend well enough to know that there was something they wished to speak with her about, but didn't want to just come out and say anything. She decided to play along for the moment, offering the three a nod of acknowledgement. "Naruto-san, Akane-san, it's nice to finally meet you. The few times I've seen Anko she had nothing but good things to say." "That's surprising," Naruto commented with a light grin. Kurenai was slightly surprised by how deep his voice sounded. "Considering how all she ever does is complain about Akane-kan and I when we're on missions." "Yeah, well, you can't blame me when the two of you drive me absolutely crazy," Anko shot back. "You're already crazy, sensei," Akane quipped with a grin. "Besides, we all know you love it." Anko snorted and muttered something about sex-crazed redheads under her breath. Kurenai looked at her curiously, having not heard what she said, but shrugged in the end and turned to their last companion. "I don't believe we've met." "Hello," the boy bowed and Kurenai's eyes widened as she heard the distinctly male voice. She had thought he was a girl. "My name is Haku." "A pleasure to meet you, Hakusen," Kurenai recovered from her shock admirably. Once they had all sat down, a waiter came. All five of them saw the man's eyes stray to Naruto and a scowl come across his face. It looked like he wanted to kick the boy out, but when he spotted Anko take her thumb and run it across her throat in a threatening manner, he decided to just ignore the boy. "Can I take your orders?" "Yes, I would like a plate of your assorted sushi and some jasmine tea," Kurenai said. "And I'd like a plate of dango and some red bean soup," Anko ordered. "I'll have your katsudon, one," Akane said. Haku looked over the menu before ordering. "I would like your nyuman, too." The man nodded and began to leave. Once again, everyone noticed that he was leaving before Naruto could give his order. Of course he didn't get far. The moment the waiter had turned around, several snakes wrapped around him and began to squeeze hard enough to elicit a pained grunt. Now, Anko said as she lifted the man in the air and turned him around so that he was facing the table again. By now they had drawn the attention of the other patrons, but ignored them for the man currently wrapped in Anko's snakes. She gave him a bloodthirsty grin and sent a mild dose of killing intent his way, causing the waiter to shiver. "You forgot to take my other student's order. That wasn't very polite." She let her snake squeeze him again, letting the man know what would happen if he did not follow through with the woman's subtle, or not so subtle, suggestion. What would like to have?" The man looked like he had swallowed something particularly vile at having to serve the village demon. "I'll have your Hayashi Chuka, 3, Naruto said after a few moments of thought. "And you will bring his order," Anko said in a threatening tone. "If you don't, my snakes will make sure that limp dick of yours will never get up again." The waiter's eyes widened and his face paled, before he nodded empathetically. Picking on the demon wasn't worth losing his ability to have sex. Anko sent the man scurrying and Kurenai shook her head as she looked at Naruto. "I apologize for that man's behavior, it was rude and uncalled for." "It was," Naruto agreed. He absently put in a mental note to do something nice for Kurenai, as well as another one to find out where that waiter lives and prank his ass to oblivion. "But it wasn't your fault, you have nothing to apologize for." Kurenai blinked at the blonde's display of maturity. She was slightly surprised by it. Even though she had seen his scores, watched his display during team emplacement and listened to Anko's praising of his abilities, she had not expected his mature answer. She was still more used to watching him run around pranking the local populace that this new Naruto would take some getting used to. Before their food arrived, the group had a light discussion. Anko shared the story of their rank mission in Nami no Kuni with Kurenai, who had heard rumor of the mission, along with hearing about Zabuza joining their ranks. though she had not known about Haku being said ninja's apprentice. Conversation tapered off once the food arrived, and the group began to focus more on eating. However, when they had finished, Kurenai looked at Anko. I take it there is a reason you brought these three? Anko looked over at Naruto, who pulled out a rather impressive-looking seal away on a sealing tag and slapped it under the table. Kurenai could only guess that it was some kind of silencing seal. Naruto pointed to himself, Akane and Haku, wanted to ask for your help. My help? Kurenai blinked in surprise. Yes, Naruto said, you see, Haku here is a powerful Kekkei Genkei that allows him to use Hayaton Jutsu, as well as several special jutsu of that element that no one else can use. Because of this, we have no doubt that the council, in all their esteemed, high-strung, stick-up-their-ass wisdom. Here Anko and Akane snickered at the blonde's description of the council. Kurenai actually thought it was rather amusing as well, but being the respectful woman she was, kept her peace. We'll no doubt try to force him to either join a clan and make him impregnate several women, or place him under the CRA and force him to impregnate several women. They all watched as Kurenai scowled. Being who she was, they knew that she disliked how the male population, particularly those in power, held such disrespect for the female gender. It was half the reason they had come to her. Haku isn't particularly interested in even dating right now, much less marrying, especially marrying multiple women, the blonde continued. And how can I help? Asked Kurenai. She would honestly like to help. The last thing she wanted was to have several girls being used as breeding stock just so Konoha could gain a new bloodline. But she couldn't really see how she could do anything. Now they had gotten to the crux of why they had come. Naruto gave her a look that almost made Kurenai go into shock. It was a one-of-a-kind look, or it had been. The only other time she had seen that look was when she got back from her first B rank as a Chunin, a mission that had gone wrong and gotten one of their members killed. It was the look she had seen on the face of the yondaime, Minato Namikaze. Anko trusts you implicitly, so I will too, he said in a tone that let her know she would regret betraying the trust he was extending. I want you to hold the council seat for the Namikaze clan. Flashback end. Kurenai smiled as she ignored Koharu and walked over to one of the empty seats at the clan head table, sitting down next to the mother of her friend Hana. This action got several raised eyebrows from many of the people in the council chambers. Koharu scowled and likely would have said something, had Sarutobi not spoken up first. I too am curious about your presence here, Kurenai-san, he said in a tone that made it sound like he was asking a question, but in truth was giving an order. Of course, Hokage-sama, Kurenai said, I am here to represent the head of the Namikaze clan. Pandemonium broke out amongst the council members. Many of the civilians were yelling, shouting out about how the Namikaze clan was dead. The Konoha and Shinobi councils were looking at her in both confusion and shock, except for Hayashi Hyuga, who was looking at her in mild curiosity. Meanwhile, the elders were glowering at the woman, wondering if what she said was true, and if so, why they didn't know about the existence of the Namikaze clan head. Silence. Sarutobi bellowed. Almost instantly everyone shut up. The aging Hokage leaned back in his seat and put on a pensive expression. Kurenai-san, do you have any proof that the Namikaze clan is in fact alive? We all know that Minato died before having a child. Cunning, Naruto-kun, Sarutobi thought as he looked at the young woman. He couldn't help but admire this well-played move. By appointing someone to the council, Naruto effectively had a spy within the ruling body of Konoha. And by using Kurenai it threw off suspicion of who the last Namikaze was, since she and Naruto had no real relation beyond Anko. I do. Kurenai reached into her pouch and pulled out a scroll. She stood up and went to hand it over to Sarutobi. This scroll contains the active blood crest of the Namikaze clan, which only a member of the clan can activate. As the raven-haired beauty walked back to her seat, Sarutobi unrolled the scroll and saw that it did indeed have the crest of the Namikaze clan, and it was activated, as evidenced by the red glow. The Namikaze crest was in actuality a combination, it was Uzumaki Swirl of the Uzumaki clan, and the tri-pronged kunai for Minato's Hirishin. He had created the crest after his nomination as the Hokage, which had automatically given him a seat on the Konoha clan council, though he had not been able to fill the position because of his tenure as Hokage. "This is the official crest," Sarutobi commented in a loud voice. He handed it to Koharu, who was seated on his right, and it is active. He almost smirked when he saw the three elders scowl at seeing an active crest before they passed it along. By the time it was returned to Kurenai, many people were once again shouting, most asking the question of why Namikaze-sama had not revealed himself. When the Sandaime had quieted the council down again, Kurenai said, "I know everyone wants to know why Namikaze-sama refuses to reveal himself. I believe that it should be obvious, but I will state the reasons for the benefit of those who haven't figured it out yet." It was a subtle jab, one that only a few people got. Those who did, but hadn't figured out the reason scowled. Because of his father, Yondaime-sama, Namikaze-sama would have many enemies should he reveal himself, particularly in Iwa and Kyumo. Because of this, he feels it would be better to remain hidden until he can properly protect himself. "He is a shinobi then?" asked Danzo, leaning forward in interest. He wondered why he had never heard of the Yondaime having a son. Of course, he had known that Minato had been dating that whore from Yuzu, but... Danzo paused in that thought, his single eye narrowing as he followed it to its chosen course. If his thoughts were correct, then this could very well change everything. "He is," Kurenai confirmed. Before anyone else could speak, Sarutobi said, "Then why don't we continue with our discussion? Unless Kurenaisen has anything to add." "Just a few things," Kurenai commented. "The first is that he would like to apologize for not being here in person. You all know the circumstances, but he still feels as though he has dishonored you by not showing himself." That was a well-calculated lie, of course. Kurenai knew that Naruto couldn't give a flying rat's ass about the council. But he wanted to play the part of the humble clan head for the moment. It seemed to have worked as many of the council members were nodding in satisfaction. Kurenai had to hide a smirk. "Also, Namikaze-sama realizes that I may not always be available," she continued, "which is why he would like to appoint Sum-san as his benefactor in my absence." Sum had been on Kushina's genin team, and had been one of her best friends, even though she had not told the woman about her pregnancy. Sum looked slightly startled but nodded nonetheless. She had to admit she was rather pleased to be chosen over Hayashi, who looked like he had swallowed a lemon. "Whenever there is a council meeting that I cannot attend, Sum-san will fill me in upon my return, and I shall in turn inform Namikaze-sama." The last subject Namikaze-sama would like to approach is that of the new ninja who has been brought to the village. Many people perked up at this, their expressions ranging from curious to distrusting. Now Kurenai really had to suppress a grin as she thought of how many plans her next statement would ruin. "He has decreed that Hakusen is officially a ward of the Namikaze clan. Any slight against him will be considered a slightly against the Namikaze clan. This includes, attempting to bribe, threaten, or attempt to claim his bloodline without Hakusen's express permission. All slights against Haku will result in all Namikaze clan assets being barred from whichever clan was responsible for acting against Namikaze-sama's ward." Many people paled at this announcement. Before Minato had taken the position of Hokage and earned a seat on the clan side of the council, the Namikaze clan had been a very wealthy merchant clan. When Minato died, all of the clan assets, meaning 1/3 of the entire village's shops, had been put under the custody of the council. With a new clan head, that meant all of those shops now belonged to whoever was the new head. That essentially meant that should someone attempt to gain Haku's bloodline, said clan or person would not only be blocked by 1/3 of the shops in Konoha, but likely blacklisted from the other shops who wished to get on the Namikaze clan head's good side. It would be a crippling blow for anyone. They would be even more hated than the Kyubi brat. This announcement of course caused chaos once again. Sarutobi looked over at Kurenai, who noticed and gave him a benign smile that spoke of a job well done. The aging Hokage looked at all of the screaming council members and only had one thought: I don't know whether I should congratulate Naruto-kun on a move well played, or curse him for the headache I'm starting to get. He sighed, I'm getting too old for this shit. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. This is Raven Sage signing off.